I, um, gosh, I've got so much. I want to touch on Eric Adams with you. Can we
Let's do
touch on
that.
that? Okay, real quick. Let's touch on Eric Adams. What's the state of the state? This is the mayor of New York. Mayor of New York indicted the Federalist Society prosecutor from the Southern District, resigning because she's been now told no, or dropping the case against Adams because he's going to cooperate with the feds on immigration strategies that are being imposed in Manhattan. Speak to this. Where is this legally? And there's been other. It's not just the one person there at the Southern District who's resigned.
There are eight prosecutors who, many of them make a career out of this. Some people like myself, we stay 6 or 7 years. Someone like Adam Schiff did that. That's also the norm in the government, that people do it for 6 or 7 years and then go on to the next challenge in their professional career. But there are people who stay for, 20 years. And these tended to be people who had more made it a career. They weren't just there for 6 or 7 years and going to do something more exciting or challenging next. Those people resigned, eight of them, including, and this is very important for people to understand, the acting U.S. attorney. But she wasn't just some deep state person who moved up to that job. She was actually picked by Trump a few weeks ago. But the problem was that she was being asked to do something, and this is why all the federal prosecutors around the country, over 1,000, have signed a petition supporting her. She was being asked to do something that was illegal and unethical, and she wanted to preserve her bar license. I think she's very heroic in this thing, but she was also really compelled, and an ethical lawyer would be compelled, and that's why eight of them quit. Now, they could have dressed this thing up, but this Emil Bove, whose claim to fame is that I'm not making this up, he's President Trump's criminal defense lawyer. He's now the acting #2 person in the Department of Justice. He was looking around for someone to sign this thing, like the Saturday Night Massacre. He was looking for his Bork who would sign this thing, and he finally found one. But before that, people had resigned all over the place. And then finally, and then this is the famous one where the deep state person who moved up when she did quit, that person also resigned. And that person said, you'd have to be a fool or a coward to sign that request to dismiss. And the reason that this request to dismiss, Mark, is so controversial is it's not based on newly discovered evidence. It's not based on a change in the law. It was corruption out loud. It was not hidden corruption. It's, first of all, a dismissal without prejudice, which means that they have the sword of Damocles over the head of Mayor Adams. And the minute that he doesn't do their bidding, they can say, oh, we decided that case that we were temporarily dismissing against you, well, we're reinstating it. We're going ahead with it, because it wasn't a dismissal with prejudice. As we lawyers say, it wasn't won and it wasn't done. It was still going to be pending against him, but not being proceeded against. So that was terrible. But on top of that, they admitted out loud that the reason for it was not a change in the law or newly discovered evidence that weakened the case to the point that the prosecutors didn't want to pursue it. It was so that he would have more time and not be troubled by the fact he had pending criminal charges, so he could spend more time doing the Trump agenda on getting rid of illegal immigrants in New York City. It was clownish. And then to make the clown show even more ridiculous, what's the third act of this 3-act circus? They have this thing on Fox TV. I'm not making this up either. People haven't seen it. They won't believe what I'm telling them. The head of this ICE now, this guy Homan, Homan goes on the couch with Mayor Adams. They're sitting there on Fox in the morning, and Homan says, I'm going to be up your butt, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to be up your butt, Mr. Mayor, to make sure that you live up to your end of the bargain and help me deport these illegal aliens in New York City. And people are like aghast. This is not the secret recording of the people breaking the law. This is the Fox News out to the world of the people breaking the law. So this Emil Bove guy, he shows up, and he's the guy who said he's not fit for the Trump administration. Not because he's too stupid or too vengeful, but because he's not good looking. So I predict, this is not a Katz, but I predict since he's not good looking, he'll be thrown to the wolves at some point fairly soon by Trump. But until he's thrown to the wolves, he showed up in U.S. District Court before the judge. And the reason he did that, Mark, is because the prosecutor cannot unilaterally dismiss a case once it's filed at court. The prosecutor could unilaterally decide not to pursue a case before indictment. But once it's indicted and it's at court, you have to have the leave of the judge. Now, that's not as vigorous as you might think, because it's very routinely granted. One of the problems is if the judge denies it and the prosecutor doesn't want to prosecute the case, what are you going to do? Appoint a special prosecutor? That would seem like it would be beyond, that if judges run around appointing special prosecutors, Mark, that's not the separation of powers, right? That's the judiciary, which is supposed to decide cases, bringing cases. So it's not clear what his remedy is, but it looks like what his remedy is going to be, the judges, is before he decides whether to dismiss this case or not, which is within his power to dismiss it or not, he wants to appoint a special prosecutor, not to prosecute it, but he wants to appoint a special lawyer to come and tell him what the public interest is, because he's only got two lawyers in court. Mayor Adams' lawyer, who says, this is a great idea. This is a great idea. Take the noose from off around my neck. And he's got this Emile Bove, Trump's criminal defense attorney, now become Deputy Attorney General acting, to say, yes, we want to take the noose off his neck, not all the way off, but we want to do that little thing where it's still around his neck, but it's not pulling. You got two people in the court telling him the same thing. And the judge is like, I want to hear from an independent attorney to tell me what the other side of the coin is. And the other side of the coin is that it's corrupt. And just one more thing. They asked this Bove guy, they asked him in federal court, they said, so is there any precedent for this? And he had to admit, no, they've never done anything like this. And they said, well, you could do this around the country, couldn't you? And he said, well, yes, it's lawful. Can you imagine, Mark? They threatened mayors and Democratic officials around the country with criminal prosecution, because if they can do what they did with the mayor, they can do this with anybody. They can say, you're under investigation for corruption, but we're not going to file the case against you as long as you do X, Y, and Z, which may be the same thing.
That may be the strategy.
Illegal aliens around the country. This is an outrage, Mark.
Yeah, this might be the strategy more and more, as you say, because they're investigating the investigators. They're going after mayors, potentially. I mean, it would be an expressed strategy that we've heard from Patel, for example, who just got confirmed today. Now, the sexiest story, I think, of all of the legal stories we have for you, David Katz.
Wow.
It doesn't involve sex, but it is sexy. Because I think it involves something as a clapback on the part of CBS in the CBS lawsuit that is truly fascinating. So just to set the stage, CBS being sued by Trump the same way ABC was sued by Trump. ABC tapped out, settled. They have Disney, ABC. They got business with the federal government, didn't want to be on the bad side of Donald Trump. CBS did the 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris. He sued for several $1 million. It was a basic shakedown. They also didn't want to be on the bad side of Donald Trump because CBS/Paramount, they've got another deal, merger that needs to get approval by the federal government. So they don't want to get on the bad side. So they look like they were going to settle. But wait, Trump upped the amount that he wanted to $20 billion. And that's a huge number. And now this whole thing has been thrown into maybe a courtroom. So lawyers who are representing CBS are saying in federal court that they, and this is the sexy part, are going to need President Trump's personal financial information if his $20 billion lawsuit against the company is going to move to what they call the discovery phase. You can explain what the discovery phase is and how they really oftentimes, when there is a lawsuit like this, do get to look at finances because they're trying to determine, as I understand it, sort of the financial legitimacy, if you will, of the whole thing. So that's my summary, setting the stage. Correct me on anything that's wrong and tell me about how this might end up, because Trump certainly doesn't want to surrender his financial information.
Well, I'm going to treat you like Rachel Maddow. She does on her show. Yes, Mark, you explained everything brilliantly, says her guest. But yes, you did. There are compensatory damages. And the idea is if you lose something, you get compensation for what you've lost. But in addition to that, our civil law allows punitive damages in many cases. And the idea is to punish the person in an amount that that person and other people contemplating doing what they just did will not do it, that they'll be deterred. But of course, punitive damages and how much you punish somebody depends how much they have. If someone has $1 billion, $1 million isn't much if you have $1 billion. And so one of the things you're entitled to in discovery to find out from the other side and make the other side tell you is how much money do they have in these cases where people want punitive damages. And so they said, okay, Trump, we want you to tell us how much money do you have? How much is that crypto thing of yours worth? How much is invested in it? What are its assets? We want to know about, all of the other things, all of Trump's businesses. I forget what they are right now. Trump Social or Truth Social, whatever it's called. And so it's very clever. And CBS has good lawyers. And I think that they were very smart to ask for that. And I think that case, they said in the papers that there had been some settlement talks. And, all these companies that are so worried that if they're not in with Trump, they'll do badly. And if they are in with Trump, they'll do great. Just remember, Elon Musk used to have $400 billion. Now he has $300 billion. Musk, well, he's gotten all of this publicity while he's on this, he's the South African immigrant on this big crusade, including to allow Afrikaners to come here, not other Africans, not black Africans, but white Afrikaners. They've been treated so terribly. They need to have refuge in this country. While Musk is doing all these things, he's worth $100 billion less. Being Trump's friend, doing all of these things, Tesla has tanked. People don't want to buy Teslas anymore. Maybe they'll buy them in China, but they shouldn't want to buy them here. And he's gone from a $400 billion fortune to $300 billion. So you know what? CBS and stand up to Trump. I bet you'll do just fine. People will watch CBS more. To be known as the station that didn't knuckle under to Trump. Wow, that makes me want to watch CBS.
Yeah, I might push back on you on that. I mean, obviously, you're describing what would be a virtuous thing that they're doing, which is pushing back on this nuisance suit. It's a shakedown. This is an absolute shakedown on the part of the federal government.
It's over Kamala Harris that they supposedly improperly edited. They didn't do anything wrong. They had a tease, which was a little different from what was actually edited on the air during the show. They have to save time on these TV shows.
No, it's standard. There was nothing that they did here that was in any way different than things that they normally do. It was but the reason I'm pushing back or just suggesting something else is that it's not just about who's watching CBS and like their image and like I'll watch CBS because they push back on Trump or they seem to have pursued a virtuous line. Remember, they're looking for regulatory approval of mergers. This is a much bigger company than just CBS. CBS is just a small part of what Paramount is and now what this new merger is going to be. And on that, David, they may lose out because Trump, out of pure spite, may see to it that his government doesn't approve their merger.
But, we still have the rule of law. If the merger's not approved, CBS and Paramount will go to court. They'll get a federal judge with life tenure who rule that there was no reason. They have to follow proper Administrative Procedure Act things. They have to win in court. So a wrongful. Do you remember when? Excuse me. I guess AT&T was trying to buy CNN, and Trump the first time around did everything he could. They wanted to spin off CNN and do all that kind of stuff. I don't know. AT&T might have wished that they had spun off CNN. I don't think they made too much money with my old station, but the point is that it didn't work. It didn't work. They kept CBS. They got the merger approved. I'm sorry. They kept CNN. They got the merger approved. AT&T did. They had, I think, great lawyers. And so that's what's going to happen. So this whole idea that we're a banana republic and that everyone has to kowtow to El Generalissimo, this is not the world that we live in. You can be El Generalissimo. Trump's gone down in the polls. Eggs have gone up. Milk has gone up. Gasoline is about to go up. He's so unpopular. And Mark, you and I have both been alive during presidents when they got to be really unpopular. Bush's dad got to be that point against Clinton in 92. His name just became a joke, and his supposed followers, remember, he'd been at 80% in the polls, Bush's dad had been. And suddenly, when it's over, when the people start to be, repulsed by you or your policies or feel this kind of revulsion that I think people are feeling toward Trump, this Elon Musk thing, this is unbelievable. You see, Time Magazine put him at the Oval Office
Resolute desk. Yeah. I mean,
and then Sean Kennedy did that stupid thing where he said it's like interviewing two brothers. It's like, can you imagine Hannity, Musk, and Trump?
Hannity does the damage control, and Hannity
he tries.
Yeah,
he tries, but that triumvirate, Mark, that's not what that's not what the Trump voters voted for. And so I think things are really going the other way. I think people who are I'm upset about the Kash Patel thing. Do we have 2 minutes to talk about Kash Patel?
Yeah, I mean, I
Or
think it's horrifying. Go ahead, please.
Well, it's horrifying that he's going to be the head of the FBI. Even McConnell voted for him. I mean, McConnell cast, two votes that made sense on Tulsi Gabbard, against Tulsi Gabbard, and against RFK Jr. Right, but now he's back supporting Kash Patel, and I mean, people who believe that law enforcement should be nonpartisan, which used to be everybody. If you went around and you asked people, should the head of the FBI open an investigation because he has an enemies list, they would say no. No one with an enemies list should ever be confirmed to be head of the FBI. They've gone after, he's wanted a list, remember this, of all the people who worked on the January 6 cases. And it's unbelievable. It's not just the Trump cases. You could maybe see that Trump wanted to retaliate because he's that kind of vengeful person against the people who investigated him. These are the people who investigated the January 6th, FBI agents who investigated January 6th marauders where 5 people died at the Capitol. Every FBI agent, every U.S. attorney thought that was a righteous case because, as I say, 5 people died. They broke into the Capitol. They stormed the place. They threatened to hang the vice president. So I don't understand it at all. Murkowski and Collins, they did the right thing and they voted against him. And this is terrible. And the idea that when the Democrats retake power in less than 4 years, of course, they're going to fire him. They're not going to respect his supposed term. But the Democrats can never play this game. They're going to find someone with the judgment of Solomon who has no enemies list, and they'll be the Democrats, nominee.
Yeah, I mean, you're very optimistic.
They're never going to play. No, the Democrats can never play. The other side can never play on this enemies list. And of course, everybody's going to bring up, I'm a criminal defense attorney now. I'm just waiting for a client to say that, I did such and such a thing. I contributed, $2,000 to Kamala Harris. I did such and such, and now I've been selected for a criminal investigation. And it used to always be that everyone would roll their eyes. Federal judges aren't going to roll their eyes anymore when you bring up selective prosecution with someone who admittedly has an enemies list. One problem is that federal judges can't do very much if he merely opens an investigation and makes someone's life miserable. It never has to go in front of a federal judge. And the last thing is that the conservatives were screaming for years that they ought to have a warrant before they opened an investigation, that the deep state was going after conservatives and they ought to get a warrant before they did these FISA investigations. And Patel claimed that he was all for that. Well, now Patel has changed his mind. No, they shouldn't have to go get a warrant before they opened a FISA investigation. So something that conservatives claim that they cared about, they don't care about as long as their man is wearing the crown at the FBI.
My God, the hypocrisy out of the GOP, and I'm sure if they're GOPers, maybe you'll find it in the Democrats, but I don't think you'll find it on the level. These guys are gold medalist winners when it comes to hypocrisy. I mean, look at what they've done with the Supreme Court. Where there was an open seat, that whole issue with McConnell, and then, of course, a month before the election, they filled the seat. I mean, it's just there are more double standards and hypocrisy when it comes to the law out of the GOP than I can even keep track of. I did have. One more thing I want to ask you, and it's an immigration-related thing, but don't have a lot of time, so I really need to keep it tight. There's a Venezuelan who is bringing a class action on the part of other Venezuelans who are being protected because under the Biden administration, this group of people received federal protection, presidential protection, to remain in this country. She's working, she's doing, and she's the lead plaintiff in this suit. And now there was a revocation of her protection. She lives in Culver City, California, and she's suing now over this executive order that could have her deported in a little more than a month. Okay, so the lawsuit is saying that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, who has revoked this protection, has illegally revoked this 18-month extension of a temporary protection status that Joe Biden had granted Venezuelans. So Noem's order reverses that status, not only for her, but for 350,000 Venezuelans living in the United States. So this 49-year-old woman, she's a food delivery driver, as I say, she and the other 350,000 Venezuelans could lose that protected status. They could get shipped out of America, and another 250,000 might lose that in September. speak to this case and this lawsuit and what her chances might be of remaining in this country? And might she just be able to stall the way the Trump people stall so much and remain in the country that way?
Well, I hope that she does well. Obviously, if I were in office, I wouldn't have taken that action against her and people who are similarly situated to her. There was a very good reason why they extended the time that Venezuelans could stay here. I mean, the government of Maduro down there is awful. It's authoritarian. It's worse than that. I mean, people are starving and everything. They have very good reason to not want to be in Venezuela. They seem like
and the point is, let me
claim.
just to put a point on it, just to, after I've told you I need to keep it tight. But in other words, for asylum qualification, you need only to look at Venezuela and see the situation you've just described to know that they are deserving of being asylees.
And the idea is if you do each one of those asylum applications individually, you get to about the same result, that the majority of people are going to qualify. So instead of going through immigration court after immigration court case, the administration is allowed to give this blanket permission. And it's like people from Venezuela, Haiti is overrun by criminal gangs. And there's a couple of other countries. And they say, look, for the next 3 years, you could stay here because we don't see the situation getting any better. We don't see Maduro falling. We don't see the criminal gangs in Haiti falling and it being a place where you wouldn't be politically persecuted. But I think, unfortunately, a new administration can probably revoke that because I think it's administrative act. I don't think it's one by the, there may be rules. They may have to go through the Federal Register and announce it within a certain amount of time. But this is why elections really matter. These people couldn't vote, but people voting about the quality of life in this country and what we want to do with people who are suffering so terribly in Venezuela or Haiti. Certainly under Biden, it seemed like people wanted them to be allowed to stay here, at least until the situation improved in their countries. And now that this may be one of the things that the MAGA people care a lot about. And this may be one that Trump's willing to spend his political capital on and really fight this thing. And these people may be in trouble and they may not be able to delay it a long time because the judge may say, since they have a right to revoke it, they have a right to revoke it as long as they went through the proper federal rulemaking procedures. And if they did that, Congress could come to their rescue. Congress does have a lot of authority over immigration, but is the Republican Congress really going to go to bat for the poor Venezuelans and Haitians?
No.
Don't bet on it.
No. Yeah.
I wish her luck with her lawsuit, though. I do.
Yeah. David, so appreciate you, and I look forward to, I feel as though we need to have you like, on a hotline, because they just serve up these legal or questionable legal offerings almost by the hour. And so you have judges issuing a restraining order, lifting a restraining order. You have Kash Patel. It's going to be, Kash Patel, as you've just said, he's going to be serving up investigations like a short order chef out of the FBI. It's going to be scary. And,
well, I said already that if people are working at the FBI and either get fired on these baloney bases, or if they just don't want to work at the FBI anymore under Kash Patel, I sure hope that we increase in some of these blue states our own state Bureau of Investigation, and we hire some of these people. It would be wonderful to get some of these really competent, really principled people. And there's no reason why. I tell you, Mark, I know you're talking about the potholes, but we're a rich state. There's no reason why we can't have more criminal investigators here and go after frauds. Many of them are state-based as well as federally based. They could bring a lot of these huge fraud cases that ought to be brought. And if the federal government doesn't want to bring it because it's against rich people, California, Maryland, New York can bring it. And some of the same scammers that, let's say, the consumer agency goes after, we could go after here. Why not increase ours a little bit and at the same time have a place for these principled FBI agents to work in our states? By the way, I can't be with you more often, Mark, because I have I'm a working lawyer. I have an active
yeah, you're a defense attorney.
What?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're so generous with your time. We love you. Thank you.
Not representing any Trumpsters, not representing a one. Just normal business people in trouble. A lot of times in trouble with the IRS. They're getting rid of 7,000 employees at the IRS. Guess what they do, Mark? Compliance and audits.
Of course.
Right? They audit people.
And sadly, these are guys who want to balance the budget. Where do you get money? You get money from the revenue created by the IRS.
Times your salary. Every IRS employee So if they fired 7,000 of them, multiply that by 12 times. That's revenue that we didn't collect because they fired people who help us collect revenue.
It's one of the most efficient agencies in government, the IRS. So thank you so much, David. David Katz, everybody.
Great to be with you.
See you soon, man.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.